Other than that, life is good.
It's a good one.
Well, maybe. Are we on the lead?
Yeah, you're on.
All right.
Morning, Sean. Is that close for you?
Is it 9?
Not yet.
Somebody's been sitting in my chair again.
Mine too.
And there's a garbage here.
I have 9 now.
I do too.
Good morning. It's 9 a.m. and welcome to the August 8th weekly board meeting of the County Commissioners. If you have a cell phone, would you please silence it or turn it off? And if you do get a phone call that you need to take, please step out into the rotunda so you don't disturb the meeting. Also, this meeting is being streamed live, so if you address the board, you more than likely will be on live stream. Also, when you do address the board, we ask, would really appreciate if you tell us your name and who you represent, so that the media and those watching the live stream can be better informed.
I'd make a motion that we approve the agenda.
I'll accept the motion, and the motion is from Hatton.
I'll second it.
Accept the agenda, and a second by Commissioner Gable. Any discussion? Any additions? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Number 2 then, the minutes of the
Move
August
to approve
1st
as
meeting.
emailed.
I have a motion from Hatton, a second
I'll
from
second that.
Gable. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Good morning, Commissioner Waterman.
Good morning, Mr. Johnson. I apologize for being late here.
Well, we heard you weren't going to be here, so it's good to have you here.
I think I need some new double A's in my back clock.
Oh. Let's go on with monthly reports. Auditor first. We have the auditor here.
We have sent out about, I'd say, 2,500 cards to registered voters in Cottington County who have not voted once in the last 4 years. So many of those are coming back to us undeliverable, or the person no longer lives there. Very few of them have contacted us to say they'd like to remain registered to vote. So that's what we're working on right now. I had a good trip to NACO, a lot of good meetings that I sat in on. It was a very good experience. It'd be really nice if each county could budget to send one representative from their county each year. It'd be nice to have a bigger delegation when we go to NACO. And then we are waiting on the centrally assessed values from the Department of Revenue, and we can start our levy work shortly after that.
Okay, any questions for...
Mr. Chairman, did they say for the NACO conference if some of those sessions were going to be available to those that didn't attend?
I believe everything is online, from what I
Okay.
understand.
All right. Yeah.
So you can go to the
Poke
NACO
around,
website
yeah.
and check that out. There were some very good, sat in on one meeting that was put on by 3 people who, it was encouraging citizenship participation, or trying to get citizens involved when you're trying to pass a bond issue, and just different things you can do to get citizens involved in that. I think we did just about everything they covered. There might have been a couple of things that we did not do, but sat in on some public safety and justice meetings. Those were very interesting, on keeping inmates, mentally ill inmates out of jail, and lack of funding for brick and mortar anywhere in the country.
Okay.
So
All right. Thank you.
they do have the same, regardless of size, they do have the same problems that we have.
Thank you.
I was just to follow up on what Cindy's talking about, I happened to have the opportunity to end up in Springfield, South Dakota over the weekend or on Friday or Saturday, last Thursday, I guess, and I stopped at the prison in Springfield. And I think, I talked to one of the guards there, and they have 1,350 plus inmates there, and they're all state inmates, all male. That's a minimum security jail. But he said they're full. He said, we can't take any more. He said, we're just absolutely full. So it's a problem all over the
Yeah.
state. It's really a tough
And
deal.
everybody gets one of these badges. And it just depends on, if you're a committee member or what. So my badge had that I was the first time attendee, that we are 100% state, which means every county in South Dakota belongs to NACO. I think there was one county last year who did not, and they have since joined. So we're 100% state. We're also the Live Healthy program participant, and that's due to our NACO prescription drug card. And there are also other services that you can get through NACO at a very reduced price for dental and health insurance through NACO. And then I was also a voting delegate, so.
Good, thank you. And thank you, Cindy, for participating in that conference, as well as being the chair of your group for this past year. You'll be giving up that chair next month in September at
Yep.
our annual meeting.
Yep,
And
I will move to past president.
it's really good to see people from our county step up and take leadership roles, and thank you. Appreciate it. Represented us well. Director of Equalization, Shauna. Good morning.
Good morning, Shauna.
Good morning. Let's see, the office staff has the sales through June sent in the Department of Revenue. We will not be having a mid-year audit from the Department of Revenue. They are just going to hit the counties that they feel need a little extra help, which we're not one of them, so that's good. And then we are current downstairs with all the new sales. We are current with the Register of Deeds office. So we have everything that they've given us so far entered into the system. And the appraisers they have started South Shore this week. And that means they have done Wallace, Florence, Henry. They're starting South Shore, and then we have Cransford left to do.
How are those turning out? Are they quite a bit different, up or down?
Well, you won't know if they're going up or down until we do actually the sales ratio, because they're just going out there and picking stuff up. The parts that I've really noticed just looking at some of this stuff is now that we have the GIS, we can tell where the buildings are actually supposed to be and what cards they're actually supposed to be on. So there's a big difference there. And then any remodels and stuff that they have done is what we're catching. But so some here, some there.
Good. Any questions for Shauna? Shauna, will you be able to be around when we discuss this
Yeah.
issue?
Yes. Are you going to wait till 9:30?
Yes, there's going to be somebody coming at 9:30 around that time, so
There is going to be, did you see the email that
Yep.
he's, okay.
I seen
All right.
that. But there will be another gentleman here.
Okay.
I'll be back up.
Thanks,
All right,
Shauna.
thank you.
Maybe sooner this
All right.
caller.
Jody, Extension. Good morning, Jody.
Good morning.
Jody's wrapped up a busy week of 4-H, and I still got one to go. I got Hamlin tonight.
Yeah.
I don't think it is.
She brought a rock with her today, so we better behave. Be careful.
Batteries out.
Yeah, I see some big windows over there in her direction.
Yeah.
I'm not a good throw.
Test.
Are the batteries even in it? Did he take them out?
I put them in. I just put some in from the
With
recharge.
microphones all week last week. We just wrapped our achievement days. Our theme was No Place Like 4-H, and I think the kids had fun decorating their booths, and we had a top winner and a second and a third. I don't have them with me, but I think they all did a wonderful job of carrying out our theme for our achievement days. We did have our promotion expansion committee put together some shirts for the kids that entered into our achievement days, whether it was livestock or static exhibits. And then they put together this promotion of Cottington County 4-H Rocks, and so we decorated rocks, and we have a little hashtag on there, that Cottington County 4-H Rocks on there, so people can take their picture with it. They might find it sitting around Cottington County somewhere. So they've kind of dispersed after Achievement Days, so they're all over the communities now, so you might see a colored rock somewhere. I know they had it in the public opinion also about it when the kids were painting them. So so that was some promotion we had to kind of get the word out about 4-H, plus spread some cheer around Cottington County. So just some things that are coming up. We still have to clean up yet today, this week. We're still cleaning up from last week. We have some judging teams that will be going on to state, whether it's livestock, horticulture, consumer decision making. I have to work with our senior teams because they also have to do a group think. So I have to record them doing their group decisions, and then we send them on to state. So they'll have to do that here in the county before it goes on to state. There is a 4-H rodeo finals coming up in Pierre. It's August 18th through the 20th. The state dog show is before the state fair, so that's going to be on August 26th. So we have a few going out to the state dog show, and that's held in Mitchell. So they have to travel a little ways for that. And then our South Dakota State Fair is August 31st to September 4th. And I'm on a few committees at the state fair with Special Foods and Fashion Review that I have to work with all that paperwork to get that ready for state. So.
Any questions for Jody?
Just curiosity, Jody, how many exhibits are going to the fair this year from Cottington County?
I haven't looked at them all. Some of them are checked in, and some, they have till August 20th to sign up for state. So we still have some time yet to get the kids in there yet. It's only more in September. So
That'd be a flex number at this point then.
right, it hasn't, they're not all decided yet, so they still have till August 20th this year to get all that information in. So I hopefully just have a van load, but it's usually a full van load full. So
When I was out at the 4-H barbecue, there was an interesting question that was asked, how many 4-H groups do we actually have in Cottington County?
we have about 13 4-H groups and about 285 kids right now.
Okay, it was close on the kids. I thought it was almost 300.
It's
So.
almost 300, yep.
Okay.
One of the comments that I heard was, I know when I was out there judging on Monday night, it didn't seem like there was as many young people there as there have been in the past. And they said, is 4-H enrollment down? And I said, no, actually 4-H enrollment is up. What I think the explanation that I gave them is that there's a lot of the young people now that are involved in 4-H for the shooting sports part of it. And are they required to have an exhibit also?
They don't have to have an exhibit, no. There's about 80 kids in archery, but about half of them do exhibit also. And then we also have a lot of clover buds. We have about 65 clover buds too.
Yeah.
So we have quite a few kids. Coming up, this is our biggest cat show ever. We have 18 cats, and we've never had that many kids show cats before. So certain project areas are blooming and some are at a standstill. And I talked to some of the judges from other counties that were there judging some of our livestock, and they said they all see those peaks and valleys of different livestock because of the farms and stuff now too.
A
So,
lot of goats.
yep, a lot of goats.
A lot of goats.
Down in beef and dairy, but
Yeah, I
smaller
was
animals.
surprised how many spots were empty in
Yeah,
that
it didn't
area.
look very full back there because of the livestock. But
All right, thank you, Jody.
thank you.
Thanks, Jody.
Have a good day. Have a good
Still not-
week at the fair, too.
All right.
Steve is here.
Looks like it's working.
Weed Department. Morning, Steve.
You might need to stand. You have to stand. I could hardly hold it in my stuff. Oh, okay. Well, I'll be facing, we're gonna do a little bit of a technology deal probably today. Yes.
You gonna try to educate us?
I don't know if I would try to educate you, but to start out, so we had this past month we've been kind of rolling out spot checking, so we had for infestations, and so we had also for upcoming events. In September, the South Dakota Weed Commission meeting will be set in Sioux Falls at the Extension Building at 1 o'clock on the 13th of September, and a weed tour the following day, which they are going to go in the southeast part of the county and do many topics. Also, to report on dicamba issues. I was just sent out an email yesterday. Department of Ag on the Department of Ag website, on South Dakota Department of Ag News, happening now. They are doing a survey, a possible dicamba drift survey. So if people want to go on and, not really make a claim, but at least do a survey for damages of beans. I don't know what they're trying to do off of this, but I think they want to get a hold of how much damage that's out in the country on dicamba drift chews and stuff. So we're gonna try a little bit of something. Let's see. Kind of hard to see with lights on it here.
Once you get the source going, once it starts broadcasting, I think it brightens up. Oh. Go. I think you want to go back, Steve. Music. Device, there you go. Okay. I don't know why it's so white.
I had it down pat yesterday. Of course, I don't remember everything.
I tried to get this to work in Apple.
That's Steve checking mosquito traps in the dark.
All right. Wow. Technology. Welcome to the world. Well, to start out with, I want to show you the poison hemlock biocontrol program of the releases that we did this past year. This picture here, I'll get this a little bit closer. This picture here is a little bit fuzzy, but those are the pupae in this dish and so that we release at the sites of the poison hemlock. The next snapshot is actually a moth that was in the container that's actually on the clipboard. Here's a moth in the picture of the hemlock, and this is the leaf of the hemlock leaves. These are tents that we're releasing, trying to do a little bit of study on it, because we don't know if anything is really happening, so we want to contain these in some of these sites to be able to see how the biocontrol program is really working. As you can see, the gentleman there standing, he's 6'5", and these actually from short plants of the poison hemlock. This is a picture of inside the tent of a release. Here is the hemlock. There is a tent in this, in the middle of this. As he's going through this, there's a tent back in there. This stuff is probably close to 8-9 feet tall.
Where's that at, Steve?
This site here is just right north of Esteline at this site. Okay. We did release some in Cottington County. There is a site here in Cottington County. This here is a site that was released about 4 or 5 years ago of the first releases. These plants are a lot shorter. That's because cattle were in there and they kind of tromped it down, and then they took the cattle out. And this is an overshot view of on top of the hill. As you can see, all the white in the area in the back, there's spots in the back. That's all poison hemlock. This is on top of the hill. This stuff likes growing in high fertile areas and moist areas, and of course you can see it's on top of the hill, and this is a release on top of the hill. Now this is an area where they had fed cattle before, so it's high fertility, and it's growing in this area here. Here is probably a little better picture of the pupae and the in some of the moths. And then a few moths that were in the... Here is a site that's down in the Hidewood Valley, west of Clear Lake. I'm going to show a picture here. This was, we were setting up a tent at this gentleman's place, as you see the silo in that. This is back to last of April. This stuff grows very early and very fast. And as you can, let me get back where, as you can see, this stuff gets really rather tall and really stretchy. And it grows in trees, it will compete anything that's in trees. These are the three gentlemen. This is Keith Goentz. He's the weed supervisor in Dual County. The gentleman in the orange is Bob Feldhuis. He is the weed supervisor in Hamlin County, and the guy in the ponytail is Nathan Mueller. He is the weed supervisor in Grant County. And it likes growing along tree belts, along field lines, even on fence lines. And here this gentleman, Nathan is, like I said, he's 6'5", and he's raising his hand in the air to tell how tall this stuff actually gets. This is actually at the Ponset colony. And then Bob again. He's taking getting the GPS readings, and so we had all the releases that we had released. Now I'll go into this is the system. This is our data logger system. These are pulse readers. What they do is the liquid goes through this thing, and then it sends a pulse, and so that to this box. And then the box has a Bluetooth to it, and then it goes to our tablets, and that's what does the mapping of for our data logger for spraying. I gotta go back this way. This is a demonstration of that on the mapping, what it's done. And I don't know if Myron can recognize, can you see his place?
Yep, I see it.
But these are the spots that we had spot treated on the County Road 11. And this one here is a demonstration of we did solid spraying up in Dexter Township, and the green shows where we just drove and it wasn't turned on. Nice. So,
By the way, that place was mine, the one with the lawn mowed and looking nice.
there it is.
Right there, yeah.
Purple roof.
Yeah, I'll get it down there a little bit better there. That's a better shot. So that I figured I'd show you a little bit on the data logger and on the hemlock. I'll go into the West Nile. I don't know if, supposedly this morning it was on the news, Cottington County now has 3 cases of West Nile virus in the county. So far we have the most cases so far in the state. Positive pools, I'm showing we got results back just last week from Department of Health. There are positive pools in the county. Henry and Florence have been showing positive pools of the mosquitoes. Numbers are very high. I sent along with the invoices to them if they basically asking them if they want us to fog when it triggers high enough numbers. Haven't heard a response back yet, so hopefully they get it. As far as the cases where they're at, that's HIPAA rules. They can't release where those cases are in the county. So, any questions?
So on the poison hemlock, is that is it simply a noxious weed, or is it actually?
It's not a noxious weed. You can put it on a local noxious. It's not a state noxious, but it is a noxious. It is a noxious weed. It's been introduced into the country. The biggest thing about this plant, it likes to invade, and it invades into trees really bad. I don't know if anybody's familiar with burdock. It's a plant that's like wild rhubarb. It grows in trees. If you ever go hunting deer and all that fuzzy little seeds that are on the deer a lot of times, or that get stuck to your pants, that's burdock. Well, this stuff will outcompete it. This will basically wipe it out. I mean, it's that aggressive and that.
Is it deadly to livestock?
It is deadly to livestock if it's consumed too much. The one thing I can say on it, there must be a certain point where cattle like to eat it, because Paul Johnson, SDSU, is doing a research by Clear Lake. Well, in this test plot, there's bulls out in there. And they turn around and says, oh, you know, if you either fence it off or the bulls won't bother it much. Well, in the treatment, he treated everything. He went back in, about the 1st of July, last of June, to do evaluation on it, and it's totally bare. The bulls ate it all. Consumed every bit of it.
And they're still alive.
They're still alive. But it's more in the roots of this plant is where it's more poisonous and stuff like that. But we do have one that is related, and that is called the water hemlock. You'll see that in draws and wet spots and stuff like that. That there is also poisonous. I didn't realize it, but that actually is a little more poisonous than poison hemlock if consumed by human use. This one here will cause convulsions, and it's really slow. Water hemlock, if it's consumed, it's like a carrot, and if they eat that, you better have 15 minutes to get to a hospital. So.
All right, any questions for Steve?
Thank you.
Thank you for that lesson this morning.
Informative. Yeah.
Take care of that hemlock.
No, I'll get that part of it.
All right, you can just shut it off too.
You have to show me how to do that.
All right, let's go on to number 4, auditor action to approve the auditor's account with the treasurer and note the register of deeds monthly fees. Cindy?
This is the accounting of the cash and cash items on hand as of the last day of July, which my office counts in the treasurer's office. It shows you the general ledger cash balances for the general fund, special revenue, and the trust and agency funds. Shows you where our money is invested, and then we have the register of deeds fees for the month of July in the amount of $29,456, and $1,730 of that is remitted to the state of South Dakota for certified births, deaths, and their software.
Move to approve the auditor's account with the
Motion by
treasurer.
Hatton, second
I'll second it.
by Gable. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Do I have any claims for payment this month?
I didn't see anything too out of the ordinary unless you have some questions. There's $1,134,059.86 in claims. Of that amount, $563,641.79 is passed through to various other agencies, the state of South Dakota, fire departments, etc.
One of the big ones in there, I noted that we did pay for the new building out at the
Yeah, we did.
extension. So that bumped it up there a little bit. Any questions for
Move
Cindy?
to approve the
I have a
claims.
motion by Hatton to
Second.
approve it, second by Gable. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Number 6, action to authorize the chair to sign funding agreement for polymer chip seal project, and that's Rick.
Yeah, this particular project has been in front of the commission several times, and they'll be in front of the commission several more times. That's one thing about this big funding. Its paperwork is overwhelming sometimes, but all it is funding agreement. And there's,
Are those the things that came to me and I sent to
Yeah.
you? Okay,
and they're
all right.
duplicates, one of these for each bridge. And
Okay.
there's 2 agreements in each one of these.
And we've already approved the bridge projects themselves. We just need to
Need a
accept.
motion today
Yeah.
to authorize the chair to sign these
Okay.
funding agreements. Just a little explanation. The total cost of these 3 projects will be $206,342. The grant total for these 3 projects is $165,200, and the county's 20% will be approximately $41,142.
Move
What was that
to
last number
approve.
again? Yeah, 41,000.
$41,142.
Move to approve
I'll
the
second.
chair to sign those documents.
I'll
We have a
second that.
motion by Hatton, second by Gable. Any discussion?
And next Tuesday will be the bid letting for these projects, so.
Very good.
All right.
Any more discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thank you, Rick.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
And this 9:30, so one would think we're right on the stick here and to figure out what we're going to be at. And that's a discussion with Bob Julius regarding the private building partially located in the county property and action to resolve. Bob?
He's not here, but Jason McGuire is here, and Patrick also. I don't know how we want to.
Nathan, are you representing Bob?
Jason's just kind of giving
No,
give an
represent the
explanation.
property. All right. Would Patrick, would you step up here and help us wade through this? And Patrick McCain, our state's attorney. I had an opportunity. I did actually physically go out and visit that property, and it's unfortunate. Doggone garage sitting in the right-of-way. It is crooked. That's the first thing I noticed. But Patrick did have a very good explanation he sent to us. And if you would just quickly review that, and then we would open it up for discussion.
Yes. So in summary, there is a garage shed that is parked on the county property. Mr. Julius recently purchased the property. He discovered that it's on the county's property, and so looking to have a resolution of what to do with it. There's a couple of different options. One of the options would be to enter into a long-term lease with Mr. Julius to permit him to use that part of the county property, or some easement that would let him have that on the county property. An additional option would be to explore a potential sale of the property to him with an easement for the county and city for ingress and egress to use that area. In reviewing all those options, last option is to have him remove what I would consider a nuisance, being on trespassing on county property. I'm not in favor of the option of giving him an easement or of a lease, just because in practice I've seen there are times where we have these leases from the county, or we have a 50-year lease and nobody knows about it when there's new commissioners that are on the board, and somebody finds it stuck in a file somewhere and we all realize we didn't know that was there. So for the sake of permanency and to put the issue to rest, I think the board can consider either selling the property or asking the item to be removed. If the board is going to consider selling it to Mr. Julius, the only way that it could be sold would be through the surplus process. So my understanding in reading that is if the property has a value of less than $500, it can be sold privately to Mr. Julius. If the property has a value of more than $500, the board would have to decide whether or not it is actually surplus, declared surplus, and then either at auction or in some sort of sealed bid process, we could sell it to the highest bidder. But the only issue with that is I don't know that we maintain that same control with having a lease and having an easement put in place if we're selling it at public auction. I think if you're declaring it surplus, you're giving up rights to it, and you're saying you can do whatever you want with it. Just like when we sell surplus vehicles, we don't sell them and say, but oh, by the way, if we ever want to come borrow it, we get to come borrow it. I think when you're relinquishing title, you're relinquishing title. So it really comes down to a policy question for the board when something is trespassing or encroaching on county property, how do you want to handle it? And so those are kind of the options that you can go through.
Okay, you've heard Patrick's, Mr. McCain's opinion. If we were to get the property appraised, that would be at our expense then, is that correct?
Yes.
The county would have to have it appraised. I'll open it up for discussion. Anything from you commissioners? Any thoughts?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Patrick, I don't know if you had a chance to look at the email from Mr. Julius. The question I had was, he mentioned having paid, the two questions I had was paying property tax on the land, so it sounds like he was paying property tax on county-owned land. Is that what is that, I don't know, that might require some investigation.
I think Shauna can answer that. Shauna can
misunderstanding.
you can answer that. I think if she paid on the garage, not the land.
Right. He was confused
Just the building,
on that
okay.
part,
Just the
yes.
building itself, okay. And then the other question I had was that are there right-of-way considerations if somebody else, not other than the county, owned that piece of property? Are there right-of-way considerations that the owner would have to abide by?
My understanding of that there's a utility easement that's also in place that does create some issue, and Brenda had looked into that more. And I think that also creates the issue of whether or not it can even be there, because it's, it's trespassing on county property, and it's also impacting or impeding the utility easement that's already in place. So that was the second piece I forgot that Commissioner Hanton was going to look into, and so I think even if it's sold to him, he does have to make some changes to it because it's impacting an easement that's already in place.
Right.
Any other comments? Charlie?
Just to refresh to my memory, is this building, was this in some form of disrepair? Was there a question of tearing this down?
Based on the information I was provided, it's a bit older, does need some repairs. That there were some photographs that were provided. The property owner didn't want to expend money to improve it if he was just going to be told that he had to move it. So, I don't know what term you'd use to describe it. I may have used dilapidated. But
I was out and I looked at it personally yesterday myself. I walked up to it. I didn't go in it because the property owner wasn't home. His dog was home, but he wasn't. And, I'm not a carpenter or whatever, but it's in, I would say, somewhat need of repair. I think it needs shingles for sure, and the siding is, I don't know if paint would help or whatever, but, and it's a smaller garage. It's not a big garage. And there's, the other thing that I really was looking at as much as anything is, would it be difficult to move it? And I don't think it would be, because there's a big area back there. He has plenty of yard back there, so he could move it. And that's another thing that he'd have to be follow up on, is make sure he'd have the proper setback. Because if he is going to move it, he needs to make certain that it is set back according to the standards where, the city and the county have. So that was my observation yesterday when I looked at it.
With that, I checked into, the city has a 9-foot, well, it would have been a 9-foot setback on the west side of this building. If we were to sell it, we would have to make sure there's a 9-foot setback.
What would that setback be?
It would be 9 feet. You'd have to make sure you had 9 feet.
9 feet from the
Besides.
property line.
Yep. And as far as a fence lines they can't be right on the property line, so you'd have to be right to the other side. There is no setbacks for fence other than that they're within the property, not on the property line. So,
All right.
and I think that's kind of where this all got started, is he purchased a property, he wanted to, he did have a survey done, and it was found that the pins, actually then it showed up that the property line was in the middle of this building, and he was wanting to repair it, but he didn't want to repair it if he, didn't own where it was sitting, and that's kind of how this all started getting brought up. But
This is certainly an unfortunate situation, and that's, it's one of those things that, we like to say, well, who in the world surveyed that, and who in the world built that thing in the easement anyway, and it's one of those deals, but the fact is, it's sitting where it's not supposed to be.
Maybe Jason, I don't know if he'd like an opportunity as far as the property history of why that maybe happened. Would that be all right, Mr. Chair?
Yeah,
He would come
Jason, if you
also.
want to make a comment on that,
Patrick can probably stay.
please share with us who you are and who you work for or who you represent.
I'm Jason McGuire, I own Exit Realty in
You want to
Watertown.
talk into the mic there?
Which one?
That one.
They're both live.
I'm Jason McGuire, I work for Exit Realty on Highway 212, broker owner, and I'm the one that sold that property to Mr. Julius. Okay.
That'll work.
So basically, I'm not an attorney or anything, I'm a broker, just sell real estate and so forth, so. That property there was actually situated there before the stadium was. It was, according to the courthouse records, like I was telling Shauna, all this came up before we were a gleam in anybody's eye, and your guys' eyes too. It was built in 1933, and I stopped over by the stadium just to make sure Walkpedia was right. I always go to Walkpedia to get history and so forth, and basically what Walkpedia is saying is that structure, the stadium, was built in 1940. So then I went over and took a picture of the plaque this morning before I came here, and it was, the plaque says 1940 to 1944, and I noticed a good friend of mine, probably relative, Steinmetz, is on there. But anyways, back in them days, surveys were probably done with like meets and bounds systems and so forth, so I'm dealing with that up at Pickerel Lake right now where things are just way off. So if that property was all situated back in 1933, my question is, why didn't it come up back then? So my suggestion would be to sell it to him, and he has been paying taxes, or the people have been paying taxes on the building, as Shauna says, and thanks for clarifying that for me, Shauna, because I thought it was a land too. But anyways, but with the history of that, that place was there before the stadium was there. And it was way before all of us were here. So, like I said, sometimes I know we can just read in our books. I sat on the Planning and Zoning Commission for a number of years, and sometimes it's about maybe just doing the right thing for people, but not making a habit or whatever, because then you got to do it for everybody else. So, but that's what I got from the courthouse records and so forth. You got to take a look at that if you want. I don't know if you see that or not, but I did email that up to the.
I have a copy of it.
Okay.
You emailed it to all of us at one point.
I wonder if that garage was built in 1933.
It looks like a Model T garage.
It does, but it is. It's pretty small.
Being a kid that grew up in Lake Norden part of my life in 1974, moving to Watertown, and I went to McKinley School, but I used to see a lot of houses that were converted from chicken shacks to houses back then.
Yeah. Well,
And so, I don't know.
I'm pretty sure my son's doghouse is bigger than that. It's not very big. It's pretty
He
small.
removed that one, right? One of them has been removed, I thought, when I went by there.
have a time to go by there this morning, but
There's only one building. That's the
Yeah,
only
I
building
think
back there.
one must have been
But
removed.
there's a lot of concrete dug up and piled up in the backyard. Looked like maybe a foundation or something from another building, so that might have been it. That being said, we've got plenty of information here now. Steve, you want to, or Patrick, you want to chime in again? And is there any way that we could say, all right, no, to clear everything up, let's get the garage off out of the right of way, but give the gentleman plenty of time. You know, it's been sitting there since 1933, and it hasn't hurt anything, but, you know, give him a year, or I don't know what, you know, I don't know. I'm just looking for something to help everybody out here. That's what, I'm trying to reach a consensus here.
Yeah, I mean, so the problems are twofold. The first is that it impacts the utility easement that's in place, and the second is that it's just on our property. So what the county's options are is to abate the nuisance. There's either a special assessment that's put on the property, or the county moves it at the county's expense, and then we would sue to recover whatever the expenses were. The statutes say, you know, that just because you inherit a property or purchase a property or get a property from somebody that you're not liable for it, you're still liable unless you, the property owner, abate the nuisance and fix it. And since he's on the easement and he's on our property, and he knows that, and he's not doing anything about it, and he's ultimately the one that's liable, and then it goes back to, you know, if he can discover who was the person who built it and did it wrong, or who, you know, who surveyed it wrong, I mean, that person might be the person who's ultimately liable, but from the county standpoint, those are really what our options are, is we can abate the nuisance via the special assessment, or move it, and then would recover our damages against the property owner. But the reasons I don't favor giving him a lease or an easement are because we already have an easement in place that we're supposed to be honoring, that we're going to pile on top of this, and then just the long-term lease issues that I talked about. I mean, the softball complex was a piece of property that was discussed, and it is a potential asset that the county has, and then we discovered that here's a lease that we didn't know about that was over at the city hall that we didn't have. And so just for the sake of long-term finality, I think you either make a determination that it's surplus and you can sell it one of two ways, or you ask them to remove it, because I think that just clears it up for everybody, and then we have right back to where we're supposed to be, so that way we don't have these things pop up over time. But I mean, there's nothing that says that we have to immediately make him move it. It's really, it just becomes a liability issue the longer that we have it sitting there and we know it's there.
Patrick, basically what you'd say a long time ago is a squatter. This garage is on somebody else's land.
I have to disagree with that because it was there beforehand.
Okay.
So you got the deal on the deal, and I'm disagreeing with him because, again, it was there beforehand. That's where you guys are, that's where I'm different than you guys, and I guess it would be something with, you know, maybe an adverse possession case or whatever, and I think it'd be a pretty good case, and I'm not an attorney, but all the proof, the pudding's on the, right there, that situation was sitting there beforehand. Number two, I don't know if there's anybody from the utility department here, has that been a problem there? And if so, where's the documentation for that?
And I would just say that we don't have proof that the shed's been there since 1930. We don't know when it's been there. Now that we've discovered that it's encroaching on our property, this is the time frame when we decide what our legal rights are and how to enforce them.
I guess you'd have to go by the county, you know, records, and that's all I can go by. So I don't know if it was there either or not, but the structure looks like a Model T garage. And there was, back in the day, there were a lot of structures over in the McKinley School District that were similar to that. Even still up the block, they're going to the east, there's still 3 houses sitting on one lot over there. And it's kind of a unique situation. So things were, you know, there were basement houses over in that area of town back in the 70s and 80s, and there were just a lot of little things. And I think back in them days, people had livestock, especially back in the 30s when there was no money, they probably did raise chickens and stuff like that to feed their families and so forth. So, but again, that property was there before the stadium.
No, I should have probably, I didn't want to go in, but does that shed have a concrete floor in it?
I believe so. I thought he said it was set on a, it doesn't?
I don't know.
thought he said it was on a concrete
I would
slab.
be surprised if it did, but I don't know.
Now, my grandma lived on 3rd Avenue, and I used to work on a 65 GT over there, and that was a Model T garage with a bad concrete floor.
Yeah.
Water ran into it, but it was over on 3rd Avenue Northwest, so there were a lot of structures like that that did have concrete floors in it, but they probably didn't have not that it makes a difference, they didn't have the right concrete.
Don't you wish you had the 65 GTO yet?
Yeah, I had to get rid of it.
What is the wishes of that commission here? What's the wishes?
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask Patrick a question. So what would be, if we were to ask Mr. Julius to remove the shed, how would we word that motion? Be just...
Well, the county, being a government agency, doesn't have to institute a civil claim to ask him to move it or to abate the nuisance or do the special assessment. So we can just formally ask him to remove it, and then we begin that process. As far as the special assessment, that would probably take some talking to Shauna and Cindy as far as how that happens and what the costs are that the county incurs that we would impose on the special assessment. But formally, I think it's just the commission declines to, the motion would be to decline to make the sale and ask them to remove the nuisance, and then we would treat it as any other nuisance that we would in the county. If there's a dilapidated building or something, there's a formal process that we take to handle those matters.
I guess I would make that motion.
We have a motion by Gable. Does everybody understand the motion? Is there a second? Is there a second to Mr. Gable's motion?
I'll second that.
We have a second by Hanton. Discussion. Any discussion?
It's unfortunate, that this was improperly placed back whenever it was done. And through the process of the survey, it was found. But we also have to keep in mind the fact that, like Patrick said, we would have to determine property surplus. Otherwise, because we have other taxpayers that would question then if they want a piece of property, then would we also be entitled to sell them property down the road because of what we did here, if we can't determine that it's surplus.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
What length of time with Mr. Gable's motion is there a time limit in there?
Well, that's up to Mr. Gable. Would you like to amend your motion?
Yeah, I'm willing to amend it if you have an idea on when, about 6 months from now. I don't know. Would that be reasonable? Or anybody have any thoughts on timeline?
Well, if he wanted to, if he wants to move it to a foundation or to a concrete slab or something like that, it's going to take him a while to get that prepared, and 6 months might...
A year or 2 years? It doesn't. I don't think the time frame is important. So I'm willing to amend the motion to whatever people would suggest. How about within 2 years?
Brenda, you have any time frame in mind?
Reasonable.
Might be,
reasonable.
That's a subjective term. So let's say 2 years, within the next 2 years.
Within the next 2 years.
But are we liable then if that's sitting there for the next 2 years? Are we putting ourselves at a liability risk? That's the thing. I don't know.
Apparently, we've been liable for the last 100 years or whatever, so I guess.
I mean, it all comes down to notice. I mean, once the county knows that it's there and that it does pose some risk,
yeah.
I mean, we're kind of acknowledging it. So the longer we put it out there, that's where we're at.
How about 1 year?
Compromise of 1 year?
I'll amend my motion to say within 1 year.
All right, is there a second to the amendment?
I made that. I made the original one, so that's fine. Patrick, who is ultimately responsible for the removal of the shed then?
Well, it's the same way we treat other nuisances. If somebody's got, dilapidated property and a hole, and we formally tell them, you need to move that, and then they don't move it, and then the county expends funds, then that's that special assessment.
Okay.
Or we institute a civil action and say, this is how much it costs us to clean up your property, and so you owe it for it.
Demolition special assessment.
Okay.
And so they're permitted to spend their own money doing it, or they let the county get to the point where we break and we say that, hey, we want it fixed because our liability issues are concerning, so we're going to move it or do whatever we're going to do.
Right. And I do know for him to remove it, he also needs to get a permit from the city. I found that out through this process as well, so.
All right, we have a motion on the floor, I think.
And a second.
And a second. Would you read the motion back? What do you have in the permit in the record?
To notify Mr. Julius that the structure needs to be removed within a 1-year period.
All right, and you just changed it, you didn't have to amend, you didn't amend the original motion. Is that all right with the motion?
There was no motion to amend. Lee just agreed
All right.
to change his original motion.
Oh,
Are we okay with this?
I'm okay with that motion, yes.
All right. Mr. Waterman, you're looking at me like you have a question.
No, I agree with Mr. Gable.
Okay, any more discussion?
Just one other thing to point out, Mr. Chairman. So if I understand this, this property is currently leased to the city anyway. So
Yes.
it's encumbered by a lease, so,
Right.
that's something to point out.
And there are utility easements on it. Mr. Julius was aware of the fact that he would never be able to build on there. He just, I think part of his concern is that it's kept up, mowed, sprayed, because it's next to his property. If it isn't, then that goes against what, his property value. So it was kind of all in one.
And the city, as part of the lease, I believe, is responsible for the upkeep of the softball complex. So that would include,
That portion to them.
yeah.
One of the things I did note yesterday when I was there, and I can't imagine why a realtor didn't note this too, or understand this, but I stood in the street and I looked down that right-of-way, or that easement down there, and there's nothing. I mean, it's clear shot all the way through. I could have drove my truck through there, except for that one garage. And so it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb that it's in the right-of-way, and for all these years, and if Mr. Julius had decided to fix it up, it probably sit there for another 50 years. I don't know. It's unfortunate.
And I think the reason that it wasn't getting done or that the other people were doing it is everybody just assumed it went with that property. Well, now knowing it, I guess that will be going forward. Someone will have to step up and take care of that property.
Any more discussion?
Just one question, Mr. Chairman. Do we have to put a date on this for 1 year from today's date, or?
That's kind of what the motion said, isn't it?
1 year.
1 year.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, you've heard the motion. Any more discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion carries then.
Patrick, will you drop a letter, or who informs him?
Okay, thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you.
Thanks,
Yep.
Jason.
All right, we waded through that. All right, number 8. This kind of sounds like a Caterpillar or something, or
It's not orange, it's not yellow.
a DS850. I think I drove one of those once. Anyway, city's asking for action to purchase a DS850. I think the thing almost costs as much as a cat, though.
A little bit less.
A little bit less.
All right, so this situation has arisen. The state has approved new voting equipment. Currently, I have to haul out these huge touchscreen voting machines to all of my precincts. It's a federal law that I have to have a touchscreen voting apparatus. It's a HAVA requirement. The state has approved some new equipment, which is much smaller, easier to transport. The state is willing to buy each county 3 of those devices. The problem is with this device, the ballot counter that I got, which is 11 years old, will not work with these new devices. I do have $102,000 in my grant money through the state of South Dakota. I do have that available to me to apply to the purchase of this ballot counter, which is $106,400, and that is a bargain that ES&S is giving the state because we're buying in bulk. It's a bulk. I mean, normally this would probably be $20,000 or more. This piece of equipment. So I do have funds in the election budget. I did budget for this year, but I did not budget for 2 unanticipated elections. So currently there's $13,000 in the election budget. I would need about $4,000 of that to make this purchase. And then with the 3, they're called express votes. Those are the touch ballot allows people with disabilities to vote. 3 of those will be purchased with state grant money, and I will get 3 of those, and then it would be my intent to budget for probably 1 of those a year. I believe those run about $3,300. I would budget for 1 of those a year until I could replace all those big auto marks that we currently have to haul to the polling places. But because of this new touchscreen machine, that's where the need arises for the new ballot counter. The old one was purchased in February of 2006. It was also purchased with grant funds. That ballot counter costs $47,000. And like I said, it's 11 years old. You cannot use a LaserJet printer with it. You have to use a dot matrix printer. Those are very hard to find through the office supply stores. But because I have these grant funds available, I'd like to use those now. The only thing I don't know is I have not received final bills from the city for the bond issue that they're going to pay all the costs up front to the election programmers and then bill me for my share. So that will leave me with about $9,000 in that budget after this $4,000 comes out. So I don't think we'll go over that, but I just want to give you, a heads up that this budget may need a little bit of supplementing at the end of the year if you approve what I'm requesting today.
I would make that motion that we approve that. I think the timing is right with everyone else doing it at this time. And if you need supplements, we should be able to get that out of Commissioner contingency.
I would second that.
Motion by Hatton, second by Waterman. Any discussion?
This new machine is definitely a step up from the machine we have. Currently, the machine we have, anytime there's a bad ballot goes through, whether it's blank or got foreign marks on it, it stops the machine. With this new ballot counter, the machine keeps running and it shoots those unreadable ballots into a separate chute while it continues, so that you can just grab those out of there, look at them and see what's wrong with them. So hopefully it will get our election results out a little bit faster also, although I'm more than happy with the way that we get them out right now, considering the number of precincts we have.
Just curiosity, and for the general public that we're streaming to, this new piece of equipment, what's, barring the federal change of rules, what do you anticipate that to last for? How many
To last, well, like I said, this last one is 11 years old. I mean, they're used every other year, for big elections, and then they're used, if the city or school has an election. So I would hope that this would last just as long as the last one has. And the fact that I've got grant money now, I don't know if that grant money's ever going to materialize again from the federal government at this point. So, but this is the next move for a county of our size, is to go with the 850.
All right, any more discussion? Any more discussion?
Just one thing maybe to point out, you just mentioned though that this is used by other jurisdictions.
Correct.
For other jurisdictional elections like the city or the school
And we do
board,
not
so-
we do not charge them for the use of the equipment. All they get charged for is the programming that has to be done
it's
by
a-
the company.
So it's a
Yeah.
real community benefit.
And I believe when we first went to the optical scan system, it was prior to my taking office, that was kind of an agreement at that time that, it was, in order to purchase this updated equipment, we would be willing to share it with the county and or the city and the school.
City, school, and county.
Yep.
What color is it?
Good question. It's probably gray and silver.
Being we're in the space crunch process, is this smaller or bigger than the old one?
It's probably about the same size. About the same size, yeah.
All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Cindy, for that good explanation, and it's important that we stay current, and I know whenever, if you're waiting to find out election results, you can't get them too quick. You want them right now and you want them accurate.
This equipment has been available for probably the last several years, but I've just been kind of waiting until all the bugs have been worked out before I made the move, so.
Milo, number 10, or number 9, action to allow construction of a patio and windbreak on the west side of Memorial Park. Is that kind of like the border fence? Or
Okay, what we have here, Lutheran Church of Our Redeemer has requested permission to put a concrete patio on the west wall of the restroom building adjacent to where they have their Sunday services during the summer. In addition to that, they would like to put up a windbreak on the lake side of that. This would be at their cost, no cost to the county. This is just an area, to help them better put on their church services, give the band a place to set up, or the music a place to set up. So.
I make a motion that we approve that.
we have a motion by Hatton, a second by
I'll second it.
Gable. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, just, so would others be able to use that when they're not doing the church services?
Yes.
So is there a pavilion or, picnic site reservation system, or is it just kind of a first come, first serve?
I think this would be just a first come, first serve.
Okay, and just maybe they'll post a sign that they reserved on Sundays for church services, okay.
Will the church be maintaining, I don't want to, not liability, but will they be maintaining any damage or upkeep?
I guess we haven't,
My insurance mind is kind of working here.
yeah, I hadn't thought of that as far as, the actual patio itself or the concrete slab. I guess they're not going to be.
Not a lot of
for that.
upright.
If they put up a windbreak,
And it fell over on somebody.
yeah, good question. At that point, I guess that would be considered our property.
Milo, I guess what it comes to mind along with the liability of it, do we have specs for the fence if the wind blows it blows it over and flips it around into somebody's camper? Or how are we going to make sure that it's not the cheapest thing possible, just a little, I don't know.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
We may need to talk to our insurance company to see what our liability is for something like that.
So maybe don't act on it today and get more information.
Maybe make a motion to delay action.
I made the motion, so I'll make the motion to
on
delay.
the floor already, though.
Right, you can make a subsequent motion.
I'll amend that to delay this until we get further information.
Second.
Okay.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Okay.
So the motion to be acted on is to delay action until we can check with our insurance company. So you'll need to take a vote.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll pass that word along.
Okay.
You do need to vote on the motion. Okay.
Yeah. Any more discussion? Anything else? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, and the motion carries. And we'll just get it on the agenda when we got enough information.
I will email the insurance company and ask them, give them the outline of what is happening and where liability falls. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you, Michael. Anything else?
Yeah, just as a point of information, while I'm up here, I did meet with the insurance adjuster out at the Ag Building location yesterday, and he has deemed our shingled roof over, that portion that's shingled above the echo chamber and the kitchen area, he's deemed that a total replacement. Don't have any paperwork or anything yet, but that's just kind of for your information.
That was
we'll
from the
have to
hail
deal with
damage.
depreciation and I suppose.
I think we have replacement, I don't know. I thought we had replacement costs, but I'm not sure.
So we'll be dealing
We
with
will have a
that.
deductible.
We'll get information from the insurance company and, go from there and start working and getting it replaced. It might be kind of an iffy thing to have that replaced yet this year. There's no signs of leaking or anything, so I don't think it's an emergency at this point.
Usually you have a time period that you get it done, and it's not like real urgent or, I mean,
How about an update on the new building, other than the fact that it looks very nice?
Okay, the building itself has been constructed. I would say, the building itself is probably 95% complete. All that's left for them to do is put in the separation walls inside and the garage doors. The concrete work is taking place as we speak. I think they're aiming to actually pour concrete starting tomorrow.
Good,
So it's moving along quite well.
good.
I have one question, Milo. With the hail damage that we had out there, have anybody looked at the air conditioning condensers? Because we just replaced those not too long ago, and I know a few people that have had some damage
Yeah,
to them.
no, that has not been looked at. I was actually just reading about that in the newspaper the last couple of days, and we will take a look at it. I don't anticipate any problems. Most of our condensers out there should have been protected, but we will check it out.
Okay, thank you.
thanks,
Anything else,
Milo.
Milo?
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good one. Thank you. All right, number 10 is in reference to burn ban, and I think the county has sufficient moisture. Steve, still with us here, a weed man, and he's out in the country as much as anybody. Are we all right for another week?
I believe we're all right. I know up in the northern part, they've had a lot more rain than the southern part, but it looks pretty green and pretty good.
All right, we'll keep it on the agenda, though. I think if we keep it on the agenda, that maybe help get some rain. So, whatever we can do.
Well, don't take it off.
Yeah. Action to approve automatic budget supplements. Do we have any?
I have nothing for 11 or 12.
All right, 13, action to approve a travel request. We have some of those.
The first two are for the highway superintendent and the register of deeds to attend the South Dakota Association of County Officials Convention in Rapid City. And the third one is to authorize building maintenance employee Justin Halligan to attend a detention equipment training program. And I did send some literature along. I believe Milo said that our chief correctional officer and sheriff are in agreement that it would be good to send somebody to this training.
All
They
right,
agreed this employee would fit the bill.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion to approve those travel requests.
Motion by Hatton, second by Lee. Mr. Gable, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Any old business this morning?
Well, I did attend the senior companions recognition banquet last Friday, and just a little blurb about it. The Senior Companions of Aberdeen, Brookings, Del Rapids, Madison, and Watertown represent 11 of the 55 senior volunteers who commit significant time to helping their peers. In 2016, this group provided 9,283 hours of compassion, ship and caring to their 73 clients, driving 30,890 miles to reach them. So these are all people who are volunteering to help people in need so they're able to stay in their homes. There's one lady who has been doing this for 28 years that they were keeping track, which she was doing it before that time. She has put in 18,754 hours of volunteer time. So that was a nice event.
The county does budget for the Watertown Volunteer Program. We have been budgeting $2,500 a year, and that is on the provisional budget for this year also.
Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, just a few things.
Actually, that was the volunteers, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a volunteer center.
Yeah,
This is
senior companion is a different thing, so I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Let me look and see what that
I was
is.
kind of wondering about that.
Yeah, yep, you're right.
I don't know if we do.
We do budget
For senior?
a minimal amount for them, yep.
Oops.
Go ahead if you want to discuss
All right.
something.
Yeah, just,
Lee?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So tonight is the next Cottington County Justice Advisory Committee meeting. That's at LATI at 6:10 in room 430. The agenda basically deals with breaking down the problem that we're still faced with, so the bits and pieces of the problem that we proposed to the voters, or the solution of which we proposed to the voters. So components like the jail, secondary courtroom, third courtroom, clerk of court, all the different things. We talked at the last Justice Advisory Committee meeting, we talked in general terms about what to do about the jail piece of it, more or less, is kind of what it came down to. So the focus of this meeting is going to be more about some of the smaller pieces and what we might do to address some of those, such as court space. So that's kind of the gist of the agenda. A couple other things. In August 23rd, we have the Stepping Up Initiative. Let's see, strategic intercept mapping workshop going on. So that's something, that's an invitation-only event, but it's an important thing because it deals with the overall flow of people with mental illnesses through the justice system and coming up with solutions for that. And that's funded by grant money. And then in late September, to follow up with the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative, it's kind of similar to the Mental Health Initiative, again, looking for alternatives or community solutions as an alternative to juvenile detention. And the state is running a conference in Sioux Falls in late September. I sent out some invitations to people, and you were CC'd on them, for people within the community. So the state is asking for about up to 8 people from our community. So that wouldn't just be county people, it could be the city, the schools, et cetera. So I'm working that. And then I mentioned last week about the commissioner's budget because of the concern of going back to the Justice Project, the need to continue working with an architect for pre-design services. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that tonight at the Justice Advisory Committee meeting, and then also potential for continued work on jail projections. So that was also mentioned last month at the previous Justice Advisory Committee meeting, and then so that's just so people are aware. I'm looking at the commissioner's part of the budget right now, and the line would be 429 commissioners other current expenses. Currently there's budgeted $55,000, so I think that might cover it anyway, but we'll try to get a good feel for that, and so that we know. And so the idea would be possibly we'd be looking for the advisory committee to make a recommendation to us as commissioners as a result of that discussion. So sorry I went on for kind of long, but I wanted to cover those things.
I think you got some new business slid in there too.
Oh, maybe so, sorry.
Old and new, that's all right. Is there any other old business?
The senior companions is $1,500 per year, and we have been budgeting for them since 2006.
Okay.
Actually, no, I'm sorry, 2000, the year 2000.
Okay, good, thank you. Any new business then? Any new business?
I will be attending our County Commissioners Executive Board meeting out in Chamberlain tomorrow and Thursday. So if there are any things that you want me to bring forward, I guess let me know. If there's something I can pass on for you.
That's the STAC
Yep.
executive? Okay.
The Executive Board for the County Commissioners, so anyway, just thought I'd let you know.
Anything else? Any other new business? Okay, how about the open?
Just one thing, Mr. Chairman. Thursday night at 8 o'clock over in Wallace in the Community Center. This came up yesterday afternoon. I was called, and they're going to have an informational meeting about the poultry growing situation that affects Wallace and Henry.
Okay.
This Thursday night, what time?
Thursday night at 8 o'clock.
Okay.
All right, and you plan to attend that,
I
right?
plan on being there, yes.
Okay.
Is that a permit for somebody to?
No, it's just kind of an informational meeting. Clark County has already had this. Most of these proposed barns will be in Clark County. and they have had a meeting already, but this is to just inform the people of the area of what's going on.
Okay.
I think you were at the meeting, Councilwoman, to talk to us about this, I think.
Because some of the proximity of those buildings is close to Coddington, correct?
Yeah, they're within like a mile of Henry and a half to 3 miles away from Wallace, and to the northwest. And
So
there's-
neighboring counties.
Yeah.
In the neighboring county, yes.
Okay, to kind of tag along with that, I think all of you did get the email from Luke, and it is a press release, and it is something that we want to get out to the county. And if you don't mind, I'll just read or paraphrase or try to summarize some of it. In April of 2017, the Coddington County Planning Commission started to review an update of its zoning ordinance. And after numerous invitations being sent out, publications of special public notice, and the newspaper notifications on the county's website describing the oncoming meeting on the of the Planning Commission, which it held its first meeting to gather information, and we had that meeting. Now, the one that we want people to make note of is the next meeting of the Coddington County Zoning Ordinance Review has been scheduled for 6 p.m. on Monday, August 28th at 2017, on August 28th. At the Coddington County Extension Complex, please use entrance B. On 1910 West Camp Avenue, Watertown, South Dakota. Kent Woodsmany, Woodmansy, from the South Dakota Department of Environmental and Natural Resource, which is DENR, feedlot permit program, will describe the permitting process and answer questions. Questions will only be asked by the board at the meeting. However, the board intends to ask any questions submitted to the zoning office on or before August 18th, 2017 by members of the public. Please submit any questions you would like to ask in writing to the zoning office or via email to the following address, and that's coddingtoncounty.county@southdakota.state.edu. We have been informed by DENR staff cannot comment or answer specific questions regarding a concentrated animal feeding operation or CAFO that is in the process of obtaining a permit. Hopefully everyone will take this opportunity to get questions and answers regarding to how CAFOs are permitted, inspected, violations are enforced, and these will be answered by DENR. This meeting is open to the public. Further information, materials, and upcoming material schedules, meeting schedules regarding the ordinance review will be published on this website. And again, going back to when we had the election here a while back on the referendum, prior to that, we've always said that we were going to review these ordinances, and we're in the process of doing that. And here's the opportunity for people to step up, submit questions to Luke, or if they want to ask any of us that sit on that board. And I represent the commission, and Red represents the southern part of the county, to get them to us so that we can share those questions with that group. That's that. And the other part is, again, we do have budget hearings coming up in September. That's open to the public, and we encourage people to come in if they have questions about any budget item, and we would like to hear that. Is there anything else for the open?
Well, as Lee mentioned, there could be a quorum of commissioners tonight at the Justice Advisory Committee meeting.
Government Affairs tomorrow, I think, isn't there?
didn't have that in, I guess. Is that?
Yeah, I think it's tomorrow. I think there's a government affairs meeting tomorrow.
Okay.
How
I won't be
is that?
attending because
I
I'll
think
be
it's tomorrow. I think it's
going
tomorrow
to
at
that
7:30.
meeting, so.
What's that?
That's the Chamber of Government Affairs meeting, I think, tomorrow morning.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't
I
get
think
the
that's tomorrow
email.
morning.
Anyway, I think that is all that I have. Next week, we'll mention the other upcoming events that will be happening next week, but that's all I have.
Okay, if you note, Commissioner Van Duzen is absent today, but he is doing his civic duty. He's out in Deadwood, Sturgis. He's probably in Deadwood too, I don't know. But he's in Sturgis patrolling the streets of Sturgis. As you know, they bring law officials or patrolmen in from all over the state of South Dakota to help out during that activity out there. So that's where he is this past week. Any need for an executive session? I'll entertain
I'll
a
make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Hatton to adjourn, second by Gable. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Go look at that road last night.